Imagine you are a ruler. You have a court, a church, chronicles, and taxes at your disposal. But there is a problem. Strange silver is circulating in the cities. Thalers. People trust it more than your word. Foreign coins mean foreign power in the pockets of your people. Today they prefer foreign coins. Tomorrow, they will prefer a foreign king. You need the territory to be obedient and poor. Because the rich and self-sufficient do not ask for permission. They raise a rebellion. What will you choose? To leave the people with normal money and memories of the past? Or to erase those memories so that entire generations forget what real coins look like? Have you ever held a coin that is supposedly 500 years old? A small, crooked chunk of silver that is found by the thousands all over Russia. Officially, this is money from the time of Ivan the Terrible. But when you place it next to a coin from ancient Rome or Byzantium, you begin to understand. Something is not right here. The quality of 5th century Roman gold surpasses 16th century Russian silver by 1,000 years, as if time was moving backward, not forward, as if civilization was not growing, but degrading. We are told this happens after wars, after disasters. Technologies are lost. Okay. But then why are the very first coins in Rus from the 10th to 11th century minted perfectly, without a single defect, without trial attempts, without primitive prototypes, immediately masterpieces, and 500 years later, crooked scraps that are embarrassing to show to a neighbor? This is not degradation. This is substitution. And today, we will discuss how they rewrote not just history, but the financial system of an entire empire. How they deprived peoples of money to deprive them of memory. And why the coins of Ivan the Terrible lie in the ground at the same depth as Soviet kopecks, even though there are supposedly 400 years between them. Place two coins side by side. One is a gold-silver coin of Prince Vladimir from the 10th century. The other is a silver shukovka from the time of Ivan the Terrible from the 16th century. Look at the engraving, at the details, at the weight and shape. The coin of Prince Vladimir is a perfect circle. The image is clear. Every feature of the face is distinguishable. The inscription can be read without a magnifying glass. The weight is 3.5 grams. The gold is of the highest purity. And now the scale, a crooked chunk of silver of irregular shape. The stamp is distorted. The letters are smudged. The horseman resembles more of a blot. The weight is 1/3 of a gram, 10 times lighter. This does not add up. Between these coins are 500 years. 5 centuries of civilization development, accumulation of experience, and perfection of tools. And what do we see? The quality drops tenfold. The coin becomes more primitive, rougher, uglier, as if the masters did not learn from previous generations, but degraded. Now add the third coin, a gold solidus of the Roman Empire, 5th century AD, Emperor Theodosius II. There are 1,100 years between the Roman solidus and Ivan the Terrible's shanka. More than 1,000 years of technological progress, as textbooks promise us. Place them side by side and compare. The Roman coin is struck as if it were made yesterday on a modern machine. The Russian shanka of the 16th century looks like a craft made by a student who has just picked up a hammer for the first time. Look, historian numismatist Georgi Spassky, a person with certainly no alternative views, openly acknowledges the coins of Yaroslav the Wise, the 11th century, represent a phenomenon in craftsmanship for all of Europe at that time. Beautiful detailing, correct shape, preservation that surprises specialists. This is not just good minting. It is art that emerged right at the peak of perfection. And here is another paradox of preservation. Gold coins from the 10th to 11th century, which are supposedly 1,000 years old, look as if they were minted yesterday. The metal is not oxidized, the details are not worn down, and the edges are smooth. In contrast, silver coins from the 16th century, which are only 500 years old, are worn, bent, and sometimes indistinguishable. As if the ancient coins had been kept in ideal conditions, while the newer ones were in an aggressive environment, or vice versa. Ancient coins are actually not that ancient, and the small coins have indeed lain in the ground for a long time. But then the dates are mixed up. And where are the primitive first attempts? Where are the rough prototypes from which any craft must begin? A blacksmith does not forge a masterpiece sword with the first strike. An artist does not paint the Sistine Madonna as soon as they pick up a brush. But Russian coin makers of the 10th to 11th century supposedly create perfect products right away, without preparation, without drafts. They do not exist. Primitive coins do not exist. The most obvious explanation is that mastery is lost over time. Technologies are forgotten. This often happens after catastrophes, wars, changes of dynasties. Okay, let's assume that. Then answer one question. Why are the first known coins in Rus already perfect? If this is the beginning of minting, where are the practice specimens? Where are the flawed coins, crooked ones, with damaged stamps that the masters rejected while getting skilled? Logic collapses. Now let's take a look at the tools. To mint a 10th century coin with such detail, a steel die of perfect quality is needed. The engraving must be mirror reversed, with each line calibrated to a fraction of a millimeter. One strike of the hammer, and it's done. The image transfers to the metal without distortion. For this, the steel of the die must be hardened to a certain hardness. Otherwise, it will wear down after the first strikes. Here are the specifics. The stamp made of untreated steel withstands from 50 to 200 strikes. After that, the relief gets flattened, the letters blur. A properly tempered one can strike thousands of coins without loss of clarity. The golden coins of Vladimir and Yaroslav show no signs of lubrication. This means the stamps were perfect. Now about the preparation. A gold disc 1 millimeter thick is almost foil. A blow slightly stronger than normal causes the metal to flow, creating a bead along the edges. A blow with a shift causes a crack from the center to the edge. An uneven substrate results in one side being printed while the other remains smeared. But on the coins of Yaroslav, both sides are perfect. The pressure is calculated to the kilogram. And here is the main thing. The small details of the face, eyelashes, folds of clothing, dots in letters, are the most expensive indicator of technology. They cannot be achieved with a coarse tool. For this, engraving of a stamp at the level of jewelry craftsmanship is required. One master spends months on such work, and in Russia of the 10th century, there were supposedly dozens of such masters at the same time, without preparation. And here is the question. Where were these masters trained? Where are their rough drafts? Where are the spoiled blanks? Where are the stamps with mistakes? Everything has disappeared. Museums show wooden dummies and primitive tools from later centuries. But the tools for the coins of Vladimir and Yaroslav have vanished, as if they were deliberately destroyed so that no one could reproduce the technology. And now add a Byzantine trace. Many gold coins of Rus from that period have a style indistinguishable from Byzantine solids. The same proportions, the same level of detail. Historians say Russian masters learned from the Byzantines. Okay, but by the 10th century, Byzantium is already in decline. Its coins are also degrading. Gold becomes thinner, minting coarser. And the Russians suddenly create masterpieces at the peak of Byzantine craftsmanship, which has already passed. This is not copying. This is the use of the same technological base, the same system that worked uniformly around the world. And here is the question. If a unified technological base was working all over the world, from Rome to Rus, from Byzantium to China, then why do its traces disappear simultaneously everywhere? Why does the quality of minting decline across the entire planet after the 10th to 11th century? Not in one region, but everywhere, as if someone turned off a common source of knowledge. Remember this number, 1,000 years. This is the period that they offer us to swallow. From the perfect gold coins of Vladimir and Yaroslav, to the primitive silver scales of the times of Ivan the Terrible, supposedly 5 centuries of degradation. And from the Roman gold of the 5th century to the Russian scales of the 16th, 11 centuries of technical regression. The conclusion is obvious. The perfected gold coins of the 10th, 11th centuries are not the beginning of Russian coinage. They are remnants, fragments of something greater that existed before. And the primitive chips of the 16th century are the real beginning. The first clumsy attempts by settlers or survivors to establish coin production after the catastrophe. But if so, then where are these 500 years between them? Open the history textbook. Find the section about money in Rus from the 12th to the 14th century. You will not find coins. You will find the term coinless period. Historians recognize the state exists, fights, builds temples, trades with neighbors, but does not mint money. 200, and by some estimates, 300 years. Seriously? Imagine that the prince is gathering an army, 1,000 warriors, 100 horsemen, a supplies train. They need to be fed, clothed, armed. How to pay them? With bags of grain? How many carts of wheat need to be transported to ensure a month-long campaign? What if the campaign lasts 6 months? The grain will get damp, spoil, and it will be eaten by mice. A logistical nightmare. And there are also mercenaries. The Varangian retinue, the Polovtsian horsemen, the Genoese crossbowmen. They fight not for an idea. They need payment, specific, measurable, that can be taken with them. Do you seriously believe that a Swedish mercenary would agree to a sack of rye instead of silver? Is he going to haul grain back to Scandinavia through the Baltic? Now imagine the construction of the cathedral. Dozens of stonemasons work for 1, 2, 5 years. They cut stone, lay blocks, carve ornaments. Every day they need food, clothes, tools. And what? Does a stonemason receive a chicken and a bag of flour every evening? Where does he put them? It is impossible to eat that much, and there is nothing to exchange. Everyone else also has chickens and flour. This is absurd. At first glance, it seems that barter could work in the context of simple peasant life. You give me nails, I give you fish. But the state level requires a universal equivalent, something that can be accumulated, transported, divided into parts, used a year later. Without this, there is no trade, no army, no construction. Georgi Spassky, again an official historian nummist, calls the coinless period a very strange, unusual phenomenon in the history of Russian monetary circulation. He cannot explain it. He simply states the fact. There are no coins, but life goes on. And here's what is also surprising. At the same time, in the 12th to 14th centuries, Rus allegedly engages in active trade. Novgorod controls the route from the Varangians to the Greeks. Merchants carry wax, honey, and furs to the south and return with fabrics and wine. The scale is enormous, hundreds of ships annually. And so, is all this done through barter? A German merchant brings a barrel of wine and receives a bag of grain? And what about customs duties? The prince collects taxes for the transportation of goods through his territory. What to pay with? A chicken from every cart? Imagine a prince whose treasury does not have gold, but a chicken coop filled with 1,000 chickens received as taxes. This does not work. The scale of trade requires a universal currency, something that is recognized in Novgorod, Kiev, Constantinople, and German cities. Otherwise, each transaction turns into endless bargaining. How much fur for a barrel of wine? How much wax for an arshin of fabric? But what if the goods are not needed right now? A merchant from Novgorod brought wax to Byzantium, but the Byzantine does not want wax. He needs copper. Then the Novgorod merchant must find someone to exchange wax for copper? And what if there is no one? Without money, the system collapses. And here is the question. If the prince has no money to maintain an army and collect taxes, who finances his campaigns? Who pays the mercenaries who come from Scandinavia and Europe? The Varangians do not fight for promises. They need silver, specific, tangible, that they can take home. Why then do the chronicles not mention a financial collapse? Why do wars continue and trade go on? Now something important. And what if there was money, but different? Not local minted coins, but a single currency of a great empire. A currency that circulated from China to Europe, from steppes to forests. Those perfect gold coins of the 10th to 11th century. Perhaps this is not old Russian minting, but remnants of a Tartar financial system. A unified empire means unified money. It makes sense. And when the empire collapses, the currency disappears along with it. The non-monetary period of the 12th to 14th centuries acquires a completely different meaning. This is not the absence of money as such. This is a time of war. European forces are fighting against Tartary, destroying its infrastructure, annihilating mints. Old money gradually goes out of circulation. It is spent, lost, melted down. And there is no one to mint new coins, and no materials to do so. Rus remains without money not because it has forgotten how to make it. Rus remains without money because it used Tartar money. And after the fall of the empire, access to this system is cut off. The territory returns to a primitive barter system until the new rulers decide it is time to resume coinage. but already under their control. And so, after a 200-year pause, coins appear again. But what coins? Take a coin from the times of Ivan the Terrible. Turn it over. Read the inscription. The word Tsar is legible. The rider with a spear or saber is also visible. And now find the date. There is no date. There are no dates indicating the year of minting at all. This is a small, crooked piece of silver without any signs of the time. And there are thousands of such coins. Dozens of thousands are found by metal detectors all over Russia. All of them are attributed to the 16th century, the time of the reign of Ivan Vasilievich. But none have a direct indication, minted in such and such a year. How did historians determine that this is the 16th century? They date it by the style of the image, by the inscriptions, by the title. The coin says Tsar, which means after 1547, when Ivan was crowned as Tsar. But the numbers 1547 are not on the coin. There is only the word, and words can be attributed to any era, if convenient. Okay, let's suppose it was standard practice for that time not to include dates. Then why did these coins become known to science only 200 years ago? Why did no one know about them until the 19th century? Silver scales are found in large quantities. There are so many that the value of 1 kopeck from the time of Ivan the Terrible on the numismatic market today is only 225 rubles. For comparison, a copper coin from 1914, which is just over 100 years old, costs 650 rubles. The ancient one is 3 times cheaper. This does not match the logic of rarity. If a coin is 500 years old, it should be rare. The metal oxidizes, is lost, is melted down. With each century, the number of surviving specimens decreases. But there are so many scales, as if they were minted not 500 years ago, but 200 or 100. And here is the question. If coins were mass-produced in the 16th century, where are the production facilities? To mint millions of coins, dozens of mints working for years are needed. Where are their traces? Where are the production waste? Where are the defective blanks? Where are the warehouses of finished products? Why are only finished coins found, but the workshops are not found? Now about the reforms. Historians assert that in 14 years, the authorities changed the monetary system 3 times. 1533, the first minting. The weight of the Novgorod coin is 0.78 grams. The Moscow coin, 0.39. 1535. The reform of Elena Glinskaya, the mother of Ivan. The reason? Coins are being clipped. Trust is declining. The solution? Withdraw the old coins and issue new ones. And what of it? The new coins have become lighter than the clipped ones. The Novgorodka now weighs 68 hundredths of a gram. The Moskovka, 34. That's 10 hundredths less than the old one. This is reverse logic. If they were fighting against clipping, why make the official coins even lighter? It's as if the government were fighting against counterfeit money by issuing even cheaper real ones. Historians explain, this is how the treasury saved scarce silver. Okay, but if silver is scarce, where did the metal come from for the complete replacement of all the money in circulation? Old coins were withdrawn, melted down, and new ones were minted. This is tens of tons. Where are the deposits? They do not exist. 1547. The Third Reform. Ivan is crowned. The title changes. Now the word Tsar appears on coins instead of Grand Prince. And again, a mass coinage overhaul. 3 waves in 14 years. Imagine the chaos in the economy. Every 5 years, the currency changes. Old money is withdrawn from circulation. People lose their savings. Trade comes to a halt. Who would agree to sell goods if tomorrow the coins will depreciate? These are not reforms. This is imitation, creating the appearance of active economic life on paper, in chronicles. But in reality, a shortage of metal, primitive production, dependence on external supplies. Look, radiocarbon analysis does not work for silver. It is impossible to date metal directly. Organic materials can be dated: wood, fabric, bones found near the coin. But if the coin lies in the ground and there is no cultural layer between different eras, then the organic matter will give a generalized date, the date of the last burial. What if the coins were not minted in the 16th century, but much later, in the 17th, 18th? And then they attributed them to Ivan the Terrible to ancientize the history of the Muscovite state, to show, look, we already had a developed monetary system in the 16th century, not the savages you might think. The mass of finds can be explained simply. It is not 500 years in the ground, but at most 200 to 300. The coins have not had time to crumble, dissolve, or fade into oblivion. They are still fresh by archaeological standards. And here the main question arises. These scales are silver, millions of coins, tons of metal. Where does the silver come from? Find silver deposits on the map of Rus before the 18th century. You won't find any. They don't exist. Silver mines on the territory of Russia were opened only under Peter I. Before that, they had no silver of their own. Absolutely. 3 waves of coin minting over 14 years. 1533, the first. 1535, the reform, new coins. 1547, yet another reform, again changing the weight and system. Each reform requires the withdrawal of old coins, recasting, and the issuance of new ones. This is tens of tons of silver, at a minimum. Where does metal come from? Historians usually say they bought from Europeans. They traded fur, wax, honey, received silver. It sounds logical, but let's do the math. If you have 200 years without money, you have no funds for international trade. You exchange goods for goods, honey for fabrics, fur for tools. Where is the silver in this scheme? To buy silver, you need money. To make money, you need silver. A vicious circle. Now for the most interesting part. In the 17th century in Russia, efimki were in circulation. European thalers with Russian rebranding. They took a German or Dutch thaler weighing 29 grams, removed the image on it, added the Russian stamp, a rider with a spear, the word Tsar, and put it into circulation. This is not minting. This is rebranding someone else's money. A trading book from the 17th century has been preserved, which describes the system. The merchant arrives with European thalers. He can exchange them with the state at the rate of 36.5 kopecks per piece. Or he can exercise the right of free minting, give the thalers to the mint, and receive Russian kopecks at the rate of 38.5. The difference accumulates for the merchant, but the state is not at a loss. The remarked thalers are already sold for 44.5 kopecks. Everyone profits. except for the final buyer. However, the use of European coins directly in trade is prohibited. If a merchant pays with a thaler without a Russian mark, confiscation and a fine. Foreign money must go through the Russian mint, receive the authorities' seal. Only after that are they legal. For some reason, this reminds me of the modern system of the Central Bank of Russia. It is not possible to print rubles without providing dollars as backing. It is not possible to issue currency freely. Each ruble is tied to an external asset. The mechanism of control through financial dependence has been working for centuries. The names of currencies change, but the principle remains. The metropolis controls, the colony obeys. The Russian state did not produce coins from scratch. It bought ready-made European coins, slightly modified them, and issued them as its own. Essentially, it borrowed in metal and repaid with goods. Moreover, the conditions were unfavorable. A European received less for a thaler than the cost of recoinage. The difference was a tax on dependence. The most obvious objection, well, all countries did this. Minting was a common practice of the Middle Ages. Okay, then explain this. Why is it prohibited to use thalers directly without a Russian stamp? If this is just a currency exchange, why confiscate European money from a merchant? Why can't one pay directly with German silver? It must go through the mint. It must have a Russian seal. This is not an exchange. This is control. Every thaler must pass through the hands of power. Every transaction is under supervision. And most importantly, power profits from the difference in rates. Bought a thaler for 36 kopecks, sold for 44. Profit 8 kopecks from each coin. Multiply by millions of operations a year. This is not trade. This is a tribute disguised as currency circulation. And here's something else that is indicative. It is during this period, the 16th and 17th century, that surnames appear en masse in Russia. Kuznetsov, Plotnikov, Milnikov. In Europe, Smith, Miller, Taylor, all derived from professions. These are not clan names. These are inventory labels. You are a blacksmith. You will be Kuznetsov. You are a miller. You will be Melnikov. Function instead of history. And money is a part of the same system. A coin without date, without the emblem of the empire, without family symbolism. Only the writer, a universal image that can be interpreted in any way. This is money without identity, for people without a past. The settlers were given a function, given coins, given a primitive chronology, and they were told, live. Just don't ask who you really are. And now, another detail. The thalers that were reminted were called Joachim's thalers, named after the place where the silver was mined, the city of Joachimsthal in Bohemia. This is one of the largest deposits in Europe. Thus, the silver came from specific mines controlled by specific clans. The financial thread stretches from the Russian mint to Bohemia. Whoever owned the mines owned the Russian money. Look further. On some Russian coins from the 17th century, the date reads, the year 1655. But this, according to the new calendar, from the Nativity of Christ. And Peter I introduced this calendar only in the year 1700. Before that, the calculation of years in Russia was from the creation of the world. And the year 1655 should have been recorded as the 7163rd year. The dates are forged. The coins were made later than stated. They were dated retrospectively to create the illusion of a continuous history. To show, look, we already had a modern chronology in the 17th century. Not backward, not wild. Rus did not mint its own money. It restruck foreign currency. This is a sign of a colonial system. The metropolis controls finances, while the colony operates under the terms of an external creditor. After the fall of Tartary, its territories remained without their own metallurgy. The silver of the old empire was plundered and exported. The new power was forced to buy metal from Europe, becoming dependent. This is proof. Russia of the 16th, 17th century is not the heir of the great empire, but its fragment under external control. This is not money. This is a leash. And now, the final strangeness, the one that links the coins with the catastrophe. Take a shovel. Dig in any old city to a depth of a spade, 30 to 40 centimeters. What will you find? Soviet coins, kopecks, 5 kopeck pieces from the 30s to 50s of the 20th century. They are 100 years old at most. And nearby, at the same depth, in the same layer, silver coins from the times of Ivan the Terrible. They are supposedly 500 years old. There is no cultural layer. In 400 years, meters of soil should accumulate between these coins. Dust, debris, construction waste, organic matter. Archaeologists claim that over 1,000 years, approximately 1 meter of cultural layer builds up. Therefore, in 400 years, 40 centimeters, at a minimum. But the coins and Soviet coins are lying together, as if they were buried at the same time. It repeats everywhere, from Moscow to Vladivostok, from Peter to Kazan. Metal detectors find the same picture, 2 eras at the same depth. Historians are silent. Alternative theorists build theories. But the fact remains a fact. Specific examples. Vladimir region, a field near an old village. Depth 35 centimeters. Find, a kopeck from 1932 and a token with a writer. Nearby. Rostov region, plowed field. Depth 40 centimeters. A Soviet 5 kopeck coin from the 50s lies 20 centimeters from a silver token. Moscow region, the garden of a private house. They are digging a foundation at a depth of half a meter. A layer of coins mixed together. Nicholas II, Alexander III, tokens without dates, all in one layer of clay. Now, different types of places. Arable land. It's clear, the soil is mixed. But a forest where there hasn't been plowed for 100 years, it's the same there. The riverbank, where the slope gets eroded every year, it's the same there. A pit for a new building in the city center, where they dig 3 meters. Scales and Soviet kopecks in the lower layer. The embankment of an old road that hasn't been touched since the 19th century. They cut through it during repairs, inside the same pairs of coins. Different conditions, different soils. Clay, loam, sand, black soil. But the result is the same. 30 to 40 centimeters, one layer, without interlayers between eras. And here is a counterexample. If this is the effect of plowing, mixing the soil, then in untouched areas the picture should be different. Scales deeper, Soviet coins higher, with meters of soil in between. But in practice? In the forest, where there was no plowing at all, the same story, the same depth. So why does the version about the cultural layer work? Treasure hunters know this rule. If you see Soviet coins, look for chips nearby. It works both ways. This is not a coincidence. This is a pattern that cannot be explained by official chronology. There is one more oddity. Coins are pushed out of the ground. Experienced treasure hunters know. If a field has not been plowed for several years, the coins lie deeper. But once it is plowed, rains come and it is plowed again. They rise to the surface, as if the soil rejects the metal, pushing it out to the surface. This is a geological phenomenon related to the freezing and thawing of the ground. But then why do Soviet coins and small coins rise simultaneously? The Earth does not distinguish between eras. It pushes out everything that is at the same level, level 1. And here is the question. If the Earth truly pushes everything out from one level, then this level formed simultaneously, in a short period. Not over 400 years of gradual accumulation, but at most over decades. Then why do historians continue to speak of the cultural layer? Why do they ignore geology, which does not lie? The most obvious explanation is a catastrophe, a global event that changed the level of the ground in a short period. A flood, mud flows, war, it doesn't matter. Cities were buried. The first floors of buildings sank into the ground. The streets were covered with a layer of clay. And all objects that were on the surface or in the ground before the catastrophe were mixed, displaced, redeposited. After the catastrophe, the new power carried out a purge. They collected the remnants of old coins, the gold of Tartary, the silver of destroyed cities. Some were melted down. Some were buried along with new mintings to create the appearance of antiquity. That is why they are at the same depth. They were laid down simultaneously during one operation. Okay, let's assume this is too radical of a version. Then explain something else. Why are the first floors of old buildings sunk into the ground? Why do the windows look out from beneath the asphalt? Why do the foundations go several meters deeper than they should? Official science states, the cultural layer has been accumulating for centuries. People did not clean up the garbage, the ground level was rising. But this works for residential areas with dense construction, where household waste actually accumulates. But what about fields, forests, and roads? Where does 3 meters of soil come from there? Look at the ancient bridges, massive stone arches designed for deep rivers. Today, miserable streams flow beneath them. The bridges seem to be half embedded in the ground. The lower part of the supports is hidden under the soil. They were either built too high from the start, an absurd waste of resources, or the ground level has indeed risen sharply and recently. Viaducts a kilometer long are thrown across streams 5 meters wide. The proportions do not match. It is as if the rivers have dried up and the land has risen. Version. The catastrophe occurred in the mid-18th to the early 19th century. Not thousands of years ago, not in ancient times, but 2 or 3 centuries ago. After it, the new power rewrote the chronology, created a false antiquity, mixed artifacts from different eras. Coins without dates were attributed to Ivan the Terrible. European thalers were passed off as Russian. The gold of the old empire was declared the first Russian coins. And everything that did not fit into the new history was buried, burned, or melted down. Therefore, scales and Soviet kopecks lie next to each other, because the time that has passed between them is not 500 years, but much less. Now let's put everything together. Very simple. Tartaria is falling. Its cities are destroyed. The population is cleared or scattered. Gold coins of the highest quality, evidence of a developed financial system, are confiscated by the victors. They are melted down to erase the symbols of the old empire. Silver is exported to Europe. The territory is left without its own resources. This is not just plunder. It is a strategic bleed-out. To deprive of money means to deprive of the ability to resist, trade, and recover. 200 years, Rus has lived without money. This is not a decline in technology. This is a prohibition. Whoever controls finances controls the state. Prohibiting minting means depriving the territory of independence. Trade is reduced to barter. The economy becomes primitive. The memory of former greatness is erased. Imagine, several generations grow up without the concept of money. For them, it is an abstraction, a legend. When money returns, they no longer remember what the real coins of the empire looked like. In the 16th century, the minting is allowed to be resumed, but there is no metal. They have to buy silver from Europe, remint foreign thalers, and work on creditors' terms. The scales are made without dates, so that any era can later be attributed to them. This is the money of settlers, primitive and cheap. They do not carry the symbolism of the empire. There are no double-headed eagles on them, no complex coats of arms, only a horseman, a neutral image that can be interpreted in any way. A prince, a king, a saint. A universal placeholder instead of a true identity. The scales of the 17th, 18th centuries are attributed to the 16th. Dates on coins are marked according to the new calendar before this calendar is officially introduced. Golden coins of the 10th, 11th centuries are declared the first Russian, although these are remnants of Tartary. An illusion of a continuous millennium of history is created. We are shown a line: Vladimir, Yaroslav, coinless era, Ivan the Terrible, Romanovs. A smooth transition. But in reality, there are gaps, breaks, substitutions. The catastrophe of the mid-18th to early 19th century, floods, mud flows, wars. Cities are buried. The first floors go underground. All artifacts are mixed in one layer. After this, a final operation is conducted. Coins from the old and new eras are buried together, creating the appearance of a cultural layer. Therefore, scales and Soviet kopecks lie at the same depth. The earth does not lie. It shows the truth. It is one era, one layer, one time of burial. Remember the main thing. Money is not just the economy. It is a tool of colonization. Tartaria had gold, a single currency, a developed financial system. The new power deprived it of its territory's metal, forced it to buy silver from Europe, and created dependence. Then it rewrote history to hide the scale of the operation. We live in a world where even the metal in our pockets is foreign, where the symbols on the coins are not ours, where the dates are a lie. And as long as we use this money, we continue to remain in the system that was imposed 300 years ago. And here is the main question for which there is no answer. If the scales of Ivan the Terrible are actually money from the 18th century, if the gold coins of Vladimir are remnants of Tartary, If Rus lived without money under prohibition for 200 years, then who imposed this prohibition? Who controlled the finances of the entire continent? And what happened in the middle of the 19th century when these coins suddenly began to be found en masse at the same depth as Soviet kopecks? Perhaps the catastrophe did not occur as long ago as we are told. Maybe we do not live in the year 2025, but much closer to those events than we are ready to admit. Perhaps the time between the fall of Tartaria and our day is measured not in millennia, but in centuries. Coins continue to be pushed out of the ground. Treasure hunters find them every day. Little coins and Soviet kopecks, gold from the 10th century, and silver from the 16th. Everything mixed together, all at the same depth. As if the planet is trying to return our memory, to show that the official chronology is a facade, that there was not the chasm between ancient Rus and our time that historians have drawn. Maybe we are not the descendants of those who built the Golden Empire. We are the descendants of those who came to its ruins. We were given foreign money, foreign names, foreign history, and we were told, "This is yours." But the truth lies beneath our feet, at the depth of a spade's blade, next to Soviet kopecks. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the bell so you don't miss new investigations. There are many more mysteries and discoveries ahead. We will continue to search for clues, ask uncomfortable questions, and explore what official science avoids. Because the truth is always nearby. You just need to want to see it.